Saat ini, Anda sedang mendengarkan Radio Era Baru, Green Radio Line, Beyond the Limit.
Hey, now you're listening Green Radio Line with me, Livia Collins, in BUMI KITA program. So today we have the exclusive interview with Swietenia Puspa Lestari, with the topic why plastic pollution is in the ocean is a problem. So she is speaking as a founder of Diverse Clean Actions, or we call it as a DCA, also known as a Yayasan Penyelam Lestari Indonesia. And she was listed in the BBC's 100 Inspiring and Influential Women in 2019, and also invited in the 10th Obama Foundation Leaders Forum in Kuala Lumpur, and for included the Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia Social Entrepreneurs 2020. So I would like to say thank you so much. It's such a big honor that I could talk to the amazing woman just like you, and the people who make such a big change. And then I'm sure that I and also we as a listener now can learn a lot of things by our interview today.
Thank you, Malivia. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here and talk things with you guys. Looking forward for it.
Yeah. So, but first, I really want to ask, like, how are you there?
I'm great, trying to juggling things on field during the pandemic situations and also trying to rush for Zoom meetings just like you guys. But all is good and healthy.
Okay, good. So our interview today will be aired in BUMI KITA program, or we call it also our Earth program, throughout our website in www.greenradioline.id, and also our YouTube channel in Green Radio Line, and this Saturday. So but for the first time, I really want to know like your introductions, like your name or your current living or your activity right now.
Sure. Okay, so hi again, everyone. As what mentioned earlier, my name is Swietenia Puspa Lestari, but you can call me Tenia. I'm currently 25 years old. I studied environmental engineering, and I graduated from it since 2017. But when I was in the third year of study, I founded a community called Diverse Clean Action, which grew into a foundation which unlisted under the name in Bahasa Indonesia, which is Yayasan Penyelam Lestari Indonesia. So from 2015 and until 2017, I was like part-timing myself by being a student, and then I'm becoming the directors of the community. Then after graduated, I direct the foundation as executive director up until now. So it's been like 5 years now. Trying to solve the ocean conservation problem, especially about marine debris issue. And I'm based in Jakarta. And as you know, as the name Diverse Clean Action, my hobby is scuba diving. I think that's all about my introduction.
That's amazing. And you know, like you are the founder of DCA, just like what you have been said. Like, what exactly is the Diverse Clean Actions and its aspirations? I really want to know more about that.
Sure, Diverse Clean Action. At first, it was a community for scuba divers, those that really love diving, love the oceans, and we seems have a lot of similarity of concern. And you know, in Indonesia we call it gemas, our own struggling on trying to solve about the marine debris situation, because every time we dive, I think we commonly found marine debris under the water. So at first it's only scuba divers doing cleanups, and then towards that cleanups we produce a data, so we know like what kind of waste is actually under the water and also on the coastal area. And towards that data we conduct several programs such as campaign, workshop, and then we also do community development program, and also collaborations with private sectors and government, especially on the aspect of extended producer responsibility program. It's similar with the CSR program. So we're helping the private sectors to help us to combat marine debris issue towards reduction program or recycling program. So based on that variety of programs, we realized we cannot only, try to have the help from scuba divers only. Therefore, now our foundation is growing. With the help of thousand volunteers from Indonesia, from Southeast Asian countries, and not all of them are divers.
Uh-huh.
So, but most of them are ocean enthusiasts. So I
Amazing.
think that's about our NGO.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm really curious, like, what is the story that made you interested, like, to make a change, like, in the marine life, and also decided to create the organizations or what you call it as an NGO right now?
Yeah, so the story started as what I mentioned briefly earlier when I was still a student.
Uh huh.
When I learning about environmental engineering back in campus, and at that time, I tried to to connect the gaps between what I experienced on field as a scuba diver because I grew up as a scuba diver. My dad brought me to one of his office, which is the islands place, northern part of Jakarta. The name of the islands are Thousand Islands, or we call it Kepulauan Seribu. So I grew up as scuba diver there since 2003, which I was only like third elementary class,
Ah.
elementary school on third year.
Mm-hmm.
And through that experiences since I was a kid until I learned environmental engineering, I realized there are a lot of gaps of facilities and
Mm-hmm.
also knowledge, awareness, policy on field. So every time I go to scuba diving or going traveling, I realized that actually the theory is not like this. So
Uh-huh.
I asked my lecturer, I asked my friends on campus, and also I asked a lot of experts on what we can do actually to make sure that there are no more wastes when I do diving.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I realized there are no other NGOs or community back then talking about marine debris, especially most of them all talking about the trash on the cities,
Yeah.
And then at that time, I realized, okay, I only what I should do is actually just make my own. And then I asked my senior in campus, and then the other is my friend on scuba diving.
Mm-hmm.
She is a marine biologist. So we decided to make this community to bridge that gap.
Okay, that's amazing. There's a lot of story back then, and then like just I'm really curious, like how long that you have been doing these actions. You already said that this is a 5 years, but you're not mentioning it specifically. But and where is the first time that you taken place that you are start to make this organization or something?
Yeah. So back in 2015, as I studied in one of the city that is not located nearby the oceans,
Uh
it was
huh.
in Bandung. So I need 3 hours to drive to Jakarta, and then I need to um, go to the islands, to the Thousand Islands, the place that I grew up, just to do scuba diving, and therefore, one of our main area that we choose as our first pilot project is Kepulauan Seribu.
Mm-hmm.
There are 11 islands on the area which are inhabited. The rest of it, hundreds of it, are not inhabited, so nobody's lives there.
Mm-hmm.
But the total of the community that live there are 27,000 people. So back at that time, we tried to communicate with the community, the government, and also the the divers itself
Uh huh.
on what we can actually do on the area. So up until now, we're still growing our program on the area of Kepulauan Seribu. We conduct a lot of programs such as, trying to recycle their waste
Mm-hmm.
into fashion items or
Oh.
into a new recycled plastics for the private sectors. And we also try to make an eco trip packages so people can actually experience tourism
Mm-hmm.
but not providing any more waste and stuff like that, even up until the policy works. But then, if you ask me about where is the action taken place now. As we grew up since 2015, we have volunteers all across Indonesia and Southeast Asian countries, where most of them has their own campaigns on the area, and we are proudly introduce you this year. We are duplicating our program from Jakarta, from the Thousand Island, into 11 other provinces in Indonesia.
Oh, amazing. So great. So, come to the topic that we are talking right now. Like, I really want to know, like, how important the oceans that you think to the human life, to we are as a human.
Sure, especially living in Indonesia, it's really, really important. It's not only important for our health, it's the source of life. If there's no oceans, there's no life, there's no oxygen and stuff like that. But if we're talking about the backbone of the economy in Indonesia, it's actually provided a lot of prosperity for the people. We consume a lot of fish for our daily foods supplies, and then we also transport a lot from the oceans, and then we do also gain indirect benefits towards the oxygen productions. And other than that, if we're talking about tourism, it's also a huge market for international tourists and even local tourists itself. So there's a lot of people that also depending their life into marine tourism activities, including scuba diving. So there are lots of benefits from the oceans, especially for us as human beings that live in Indonesia.
Yep, yep. So, do you find like the tourism's aspect, like the economic aspect, can't make the problem that you are seeing, like the pollutions of the plastic, is a little bit bigger? Like when places that have a big tourism, so it means that it will contains a lot of it will like make a lot of waste too. So do you find it was true in the field?
Yeah. Yeah, so according to the theory, we commonly say about carrying capacity of the environment of the tourism spots. If the tourists that coming there is more than the capacity, we call it mass tourism. So if we're talking about tourism that doesn't care about the environment, doesn't care about the carrying capacity, it must actually give a lot of impacts to the environment, especially for those tourism providers that doesn't care at all about the waste management aspects or even their water management and stuff like that. Therefore, one of our program is to make sure that these tourism providers are actually care about the environment and they are providing alternative solutions, such as, for example, the backpacker tourist tends to brought or buy shampoo and soaps in a sachet packaging and a small plastic packaging. So we provide them the alternative on they can actually purchase a cheap packaging of soap and shampoos, but it won't be packaged with plastics. So they can go to our refill stores where we already implemented on the islands. They bring their own jars and then they can refill it according to their needs and according to their budgets. So they won't be producing any more trash on the islands. So I think even though it's a challenges and it's a risk on tourism, but if we implement a ecotourism concept, I think the impact of the tourists that can be brought to the islands, other than reducing the waste, but they can also actually make it regenerated by implementing mangroves, planting mangroves, planting corals, and stuff like that. So yeah, there's positive and negative aspects of tourism.
Yes, fantastic. And then like from the things that you have been seeing in 5 years, and how badly is that the situations in the oceans and also related to the plastic and also the waste pollution?
Well, it must be, way worse than I was starting my diving journey when I was still in 2003. 2003. So there are lots of places that I go now, it's full of trash underwater, where back then in 2003, there are no waste at all on that specific diving spots. But if we're looking at the efforts and the commitment by our government, by our private sectors, and the communities all across Indonesia, it's actually getting better because now we do already have a presidential decree on combating marine debris issue in Indonesia, where the government has a commitment up until 2025 to reduce the amount of waste that goes to the oceans. And also, there are a statement that made by the one of the American scientists named Jembek. She said that Indonesia is the second biggest polluter to the world on plastic. So we're trying to fight that number to make sure that we are not actually polluting our oceans and we are actually conserving with real actions.
You already see that the government have a better regulations now, like the better commitment than the past few years. But do you found the realistic or the data that is it really implemented in the places like in the oceans?
Yeah, so if we're talking about how the each provinces, as Indonesia has 34 provinces, and how before marine debris issue was a thing or like something familiar on the news and stuff like that, not every provinces are having a strong roadmap or a strong plan on implementing a waste management system, so they can make sure that there are no waste that coming to the oceans from their own provinces. But after this, issue went viral, and also there is a decree and also an incentives giving to the governments and also the private sectors and the communities that working on waste management aspect. Now every provinces is kind of battling and challenging one another to make their provinces as the most clean area as before. But if we're talking about the kind of waste, we have the data that actually up until 60% of the waste that we found under the water are single-use plastic.
Yeah.
Therefore, if we don't, close the tap, if we come onto the bathroom and then we see the tap is always opening and then we only clean up or we only try to make it dry, it will never be ending.
Yes.
So therefore, we need to close the tap. Therefore, in the terms of closing the loop from source about this waste production, I think there are still a lot of things that needs to be done because single-use plastics cannot be recycled effectively in Indonesia. Therefore, there are still room for make it better by not providing single-use plastic since the source, meaning from the supermarkets, even from the production itself, how each brand should have not used a single-use plastic as their packagings.
Amazing. So, like what are the things that you think that found us as the cause of the pollutions in the ocean, like the main things?
Yeah, if we're seeing from the facts, like 80% of the waste coming from the land. If we're talking about marine debris, so not all of it coming from fishermen waste from the middle of the oceans or like the boats waste or offshore like oil and gas company. It's actually most of it coming from the land, which doesn't have a proper waste management system yet. Therefore, I think one of the solutions and also one of the issues that needs to be solved is to making sure that every area have a proper waste management system. Therefore, the waste will not be leaked to underwater or to the river, and then it will be end up on the oceans. And the other thing is, as what I mentioned earlier, the single-use plastic and those things that cannot be recycled should be reduced from the beginning of the process, which means from the private sectors itself. So we need a stronger policy to making sure that it's not only the government job, it's not only the community to do cleanups, but it's also the help from private sectors that really needs to be done to make it more effective.
Amazing. fantastic. So, like talking about the main topic today, why and what is the reason that the plastic pollutions and the ocean is the problem? Like many people, like, okay, there's a plastic in the oceans, but what is the problem for me? And is that the only problem for the oceans, or is that also have an impact to the people life?
So yeah, if people that doesn't really care about these cute turtles getting stuck under the plastic bags or
Uh
plastic
huh.
straws, which is actually sad, we can actually assure them to really care, because it really is affecting their health. Because if we're finding marine debris, especially plastics, if we throw it directly to the oceans or the environment, it
Mm-hmm.
cannot be broken down or recycled by nature.
Yep.
It needs 100 years to be rotten. But if it's actually being thrown to the oceans or the environment, it will end up becoming a microplastic, which is actually a plastic scattered into pieces, which size is really small, and it's actually can be eaten by fishes, and then
Uh
the
huh.
fishes will be eaten by us. And
Mm-hmm.
if we're talking about plastic, as the plastic itself, it's actually carcinogenic, so it can cause cancer and stuff like that. So it's really actually impacting our health.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's one of the way to explain to those people that really doesn't care about the environmental creatures.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking on a helicopter view, if the ocean is destructed, for example, the corals,
Yep.
if it is being closed with plastic for 4 days, the corals will die. And if the corals will die, and then the fishes will die, and then there will no
Mm.
biodiversity happening, and it will impacting our food supply chain and then the water chain as well. So it's also related with climate change.
Yep.
If we're talking about waste that being burned or being dumped, it also produce carbons that also impacting our climate. And if the climate is changing, then there will be more and more people that needs to be moved away from islands or coastal, because the ocean keeps rising,
Yep.
and also the climate keeps changing, so it will affecting our corpses, our daily lives, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the world will end.
Yes, exactly. So it is like you made this, and this is what happened. This is what happened, and yeah,
Sure.
exactly. You attend like a many international conferences and also discussions. Like, I'm really curious: is that the problem of the plastic pollution in the ocean is only happening in Indonesia, or we have like this is issues? It's not only happening as a nationally, but also the big issues in the international or globally.
Yeah, so marine debris issue and also the ocean pollution issue becoming a trend from 2017, I think, 17 until now,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not only Indonesia's problem or the countries that stated by the paper that I mentioned before about the top 5 or the top 10 countries polluting the oceans.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're looking at the brands, when we're doing audit, when we're doing cleanups, we realize that there's a lot of brands that coming not from the area. It's also coming from the neighboring countries. And we were looking about the brand audit when we're doing cleanup, we're doing monitoring about the data. We realized there are a lot of sachets, there are a lot of brands that coming not from the area. So when we do summits and conferences with other countries,
Mm-hmm.
they are actually experiencing a waste leakage as well on their own countries. Therefore, this is a problem that faced by the globe,
Yep.
that therefore it's a trend,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore it needs collaboration from other countries as well. Because if Indonesia is stopping their waste leakage to the ocean, we need other countries to also do the same, so
Yep.
we will not find their waste on our ocean as well.
Exactly. So the waste it can move from others country to others country where we're talking about the oceans, right?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
So the waste from others country can go to our country when we are talking about the ocean.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're moving to another questions like you are working with the great team in the DCA. So did you find any obstacle that happens when you are working on this action exactly?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges, especially as a girl that's still trying to understand how life works and also how real life actually works. There's a lot of challenges that we faced on developing this foundation. So, for example, how we should gain the trust from the stakeholders, even it's from the private sectors or from the governments, we need to prove them with data. Therefore, at the beginning, we need to make sure that we report everything correctly, thoroughly, and detailed. Therefore, if we're talking with them, with the private sectors or the stakeholders, we can elaborate 100% clear, and they can understand what's the impact that we are making on. So it needs a quiet few time at the beginning to make them trust us. And other than that, of course, as a community and foundations that doesn't have the initial investment from popular people, we need to invest our own pocket money to make sure that these business models or these social enterprises can actually works.
When I'm searching about you, I found that you are you go to others brand and then you're saying don't using the single use what we said it
Straws.
yeah, straws. And then when you are working with those stakeholders, this is like become a bigger. And I really curious like what is the story back then?
Yeah, so it's funny because we started at 2015, and then it took us like a year to collect the data, doing diving cleanups, and then doing community empowerment campaigns and stuff like that. And because we also work a lot with the media, because we realized that if we want to do campaign, especially to do a behavior change efforts in a national scale, we need the support from social media and also real like official media like radios and also TVs. And therefore, one of the private sectors heard about our movement towards news,
Yep.
and then they reach us to us. And then when they reach out to us, they are asking to support one of our cleanups. But then, because it was the time where I was being really idealistic with our co-founders and team, because we're so young, and then we say to them like, okay, you are one of the biggest fast food in Indonesia and even in the world. So you actually produce a lot of single-use plastic waste. So if you want to work together with us, please reduce your own waste from your source. So out of that concern, we try to persuade them on implementing several programs. One of them is actually reducing the amount of single-use plastic straw by the program called No Straw Movement. And it need 6 months to make the management teams trust us, and also to try to implement the program. At first, it's only on one store, and then 10 stores, and then on all of the Jakarta. And because the feedback from the community and the Indonesian clients or people is actually supportive, they are confident to implement and duplicate the program up into the national scale. So it resulted into the 500 stores of this corporate implementing a no straw movement campaign, which reduced the amount of single-use straw up until 91%. And because of these big giant restaurants implement it and give the success story, and then the other restaurants, even it's fast food or not fast food, using our scientific data or research data to also do the same campaign and reporting that they are also reducing the amount of single-use plastic straws.
Yes, exactly. So for the things that I know in Riau itself, in Pekanbaru, there is no such a movement just like what you are working. But the real that I found that when I go to the shopping mall, when I eat there, they don't provide the plastic straw anymore. And that's amazing. You are working that, but it yeah influence all of the region. That's amazing. And like So you are a diverse, and I'm sure that you are fall in love with the ocean. Start with your, like you are as a diver itself. But if we are talking about the people who live far away from the oceans, like the me in I live in Pekanbaru, and I barely not seen oceans here, and who didn't realize the impact of the oceans if we're not taking care of the oceans. How do you think that to change the perspective to protecting the ocean is not only several people responsibility but all human?
Yeah. There's this funny story that I think might fit on this questions because we also collaborate a lot with Seribu Guru. It's a foundation that works to teach rural students that located far away from the cities. And one of the area that we also collaborate is on Makassar, I believe, but it needs like 3 hours by car, and then it needs another 1 hour by bike, and then it's a house that located really uphills on the mountains. And when we're talking about trying to tell them about what is diversity in action, the first question I asked was, do you know the ocean? Have you ever been to the oceans? And they were like, no. And then the second question I asked was like, have you ever see a fish? Do you know where the fishes live? And then there was like, the fishes live in the market. They only see the fishes towards their plates, the food plates.
Yes.
It's really funny. And then the way that I try to make them understand is to make a map out of their households. So if, for example, you live in the cities, or these kids living in the uphills, and if we see they are dumping their trash directly to the river, it's actually going to be transported to the oceans. And if the oceans is polluted, and then they will not see their fishes again on their plates, and other stuffs like I think the most important thing, if we want to educate somebody, is really depending on where they live and also what they do daily. So we can really make them realize about their daily life is actually impacted by this pollution.
Amazing. So, what do you think like the people can do to contribute it as a feedback to the oceans from a small actions that we can do until the big one?
There's a lot of things you can do. For example, for individual commitments, you can start to refuse. Refusing means if somebody is, providing you with single-use straws or plastic bags, you can actually say no. By saying no, and then you already have, your alternative solutions, such as your own tumblers, your own bags, your own food containers. It's actually already reducing the amount of waste you produce.
Yep.
And then after you refuse, you reduce, and then you start to reuse everything you have. You don't need everything new every month, including fashion,
Yep.
because the textile waste is actually one of the highest amount that we found also under the water. So because in Indonesia we cannot recycle fashion items such as textiles effectively, therefore it's also polluting the oceans, and it's also contain plastics. So after refuse, reduce, and reuse, we also can start to recycle. Recycling means you can actually separate your waste. The organics can be composted on your own backyard, and the unorganics can goes into the waste banks, or you can give them to the waste collectors, and it can be recycled rather than goes into the oceans. So I think that's one of the way that we can do through actions. Other than that, if we already success, we can infatuate your family, your friends, and your community to do the same. And then you can make campaigns according to your own availability and your resource. And you can also join in the community that is located nearby your area. You don't have to be a scuba diver to help the environment.
Okay, so we already talk talking about the issues as the bigger one with English. And now, dan sekarang sudah saatnya kita berbicara tentang keadaan negeri nih dengan bahasa kita sendiri Indonesia, Kak ya. Mengenai isu pencemaran laut sendiri yang disebabkan oleh sampah plastik. Terlebih akan pergerakan yang Kakak lakukan yang sangat inspiratif nih dilakukan narasumber kita, menjaga keindahan dan kehidupan di bawah laut Indonesia. Bagaimana menurut Kakak sendiri kondisi laut Indonesia secara garis besar saat ini?
Kondisi laut Indonesia saat ini sebenarnya seperti harta karun gitu ya, yang belum dimanfaatkan secara maksimal dan sering mendapatkan kekerasan dalam artian pencemaran gitu ya, atau eksploitasi yang tidak berkelanjutan gitu. Sedangkan di sisi lain lautan Indonesia itu sangat luas. Indonesia itu lautnya 2/3 areanya gitu kan. Jadi sebenarnya banyak sekali yang belum tereksplorasi dan juga banyak sekali yang bisa kita manfaatkan secara berkelanjutan gitu. Jadi menurut saya Indonesia dengan lautnya itu bisa menjadi penopang yang sangat baik. Dan bagaimana caranya bisa kita membuat laut menjadi penopang masyarakat Indonesia dengan cara kita semua harus mengerti dan mengetahui sebagai masyarakat kita bisa apa ya, dan kita jangan sampai dibodoh-bodohi sama orang-orang yang berkepentingan atau bahkan orang dari luar negeri karena yang lebih mengerti tentang lautan kita gitu.
Benar sekali. Nah, melihat dari pergerakan yang Kakak lakukan di Diverse Clean Action ini berawal dari umur yang sangat muda bisa dikatakan, dan juga apa nih pesan Kakak untuk anak muda yang ingin melakukan perubahan dari permasalahan yang ditemuinya di daerah masing-masing tetapi masih bingung langkah apa yang bisa menjadi langkah awal untuk memulai itu semua?
Sebenarnya kalau misalnya dibilang muda nggak juga gitu. Aku mulai kan dulu di umur 19 atau 20 tahun
Itu
gitu
muda
ya.
loh,
Jadi
Kak.
aku harap pasti pendengar-pendengar di sini juga ada yang lebih muda daripada aku gitu. Jadi tidak ada kata tidak bisa. Nah, mumpung masih muda, sebenarnya kita sangat bisa dimaklumi kalau kita masih ada salah atau masih tidak mengerti. Jadi dimanfaatkanlah cara berpikir tersebut dari orang lain terhadap kita. Jadi bisa dimulai dengan cari isu apa yang paling membuat kamu gemes, yang bisa membuat kamu walaupun sebel, walaupun capek, tapi terus selalu semangat kalau ngomongin hal itu gitu ya, baik itu misalnya isu laut, isu kehutanan, isu apapun gitu ya. Sebenarnya banyak sekali yang bisa dikerjakan. Nah, setelah kita punya ide gitu ya, cara termudah adalah bikin mind map. Dari mind map kita jadi terpetakan apa sih permasalahannya, apa saja solusi yang sudah dilakukan sama orang lain. Nah, bagaimana aku bisa membuat perubahan dari solusi-solusi yang sudah ada, atau bahkan jangan-jangan apa yang kita harus lakukan hanya merajut karena ternyata semua orang bekerja sendiri-sendiri gitu. Jadi sebenarnya banyak sekali yang bisa dilakukan dan kesempatan bagi anak muda semakin terbuka asalkan kita berani ngomong dan jangan asal ngomong tapi pakai data dan analisis yang sudah kalian pikirkan dengan matang. Semangat.
Oke. Kalau melihat dari significantly tentang DCA sendiri dan juga karir Kakak nih selama ini di dunia aktivis, apa sih kunci sukses yang Kakak bilang ini bisa berhasil, dan langkah-langkah Kakak ini kan udah terselesaikan, tapi memang masih ada langkah-langkah yang harus dilakukan. Apa menurut Kakak sendiri?
Pertama-tama aku bukan aktivis, aku praktisi karena masih merasa kurang maksimal dalam melakukan apapun tentang lingkungan, masih banyak sekali PR-nya. Tapi kalau misalnya ditanya kunci sukses, nggak ada satu kunci sukses pun. Kenapa aku bisa mendapatkan rekognisi, penghargaan, dan dukungan yang besar untuk organisasi kami? Sebenarnya salah satunya karena kita bisa menceritakan dampak yang kita buat secara jelas, secara detail gitu ya. Jadi orang pun tidak berasumsi yang macam-macam dengan program-program kita. Kalau kita tuh jelas loh tujuannya dari awal dan begini progres kita. Selain itu mungkin saya sebagai pemimpin organisasi bisa menceritakan hal unik dari apa yang saya lakukan, sehingga apa yang kita lakukan cenderung lebih terdengar dibanding mungkin komunitas-komunitas lain yang sejenis. Aku yakin pasti semua orang punya cerita menarik. baik itu cerita masa kecil, cerita tempat tinggal, ataupun bagaimana solusi kita ternyata hal yang baru, atau bisa menyelesaikan dengan masalah. Jadi menurutku salah satu yang paling penting adalah cara pitching, cara menceritakan, asalkan kita punya data dan niat yang baik, pasti ada jalannya.
Oke, luar biasa sekali. Terakhir nih Kak, closing statement dan pesan Kakak untuk para pendengar dari Green Radio Line.
Closing statement-nya adalah semangat. Walaupun di masa pandemi, jangan jadikan ini alasan untuk tidak peduli dengan lingkungan. Justru karena pandemi ini kita jadi melihat bukti nyata hubungan yang sangat kuat dan erat antara kesehatan dan lingkungan. Karena kalau misalnya kita tidak menjaga lingkungan, sudah ada berbagai penelitian yang bilang bisa saja terjadi pandemi lainnya. Jadi sekarang waktunya kita menata ulang hidup kita di rumah, kita beberes rumah, kita perbaiki aktivitas kita sehari-hari biar dampak terhadap lingkungan semakin sedikit, sampahnya juga semakin sedikit dan bisa didaur ulang. Dan nantinya semoga kita bisa sama-sama menata normal yang baru dan lebih baik kayak gitu.
Oke. Dan terima kasih banget nih Kak untuk waktu dan juga story yang luar biasa sekali yang Kakak bagikan hari ini untuk pendengar radio kita Green Radio Line, dan kita bisa belajar banyak nih dan mulai melakukan perubahan kecil maupun besar di kehidupan sehari-hari untuk bumi dan juga laut kita. Nah, stay healthy dan juga keep the good word and inspiring people to what you can do to our oceans and also what we can do to our ocean.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Saat ini, Anda sedang mendengarkan Radio Era Baru. Green Radio Line, Beyond the Limit.